Hello, welcome to another edition of the Roundball Ramble podcast. I'm your host, Corban Forge. Follow me on Twitter at Corban NBA. This is a Sports Ethos presentation, so check out Sports Ethos on Twitter at Sports Ethos online, sportsethos.com, SPORTSETHOS. Fancy content, team podcast, this show by yours truly. All of it and more is there, so make sure to check them out. Today, y'all, I am excited to be joined by a friend, colleague, basketball content producer extraordinaire. Listen, I can come up with so many more things to say, but we'll settle for Mr. Mike Shearer. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Definitely appreciate you hopping on. I've had you on before. In fact, I was looking at my podcast yesterday because the one that we're doing today, one that behind the scenes, y'all, we actually had recorded most of the day before, but your boy had a saving error. This is going to be my 300th podcast. So
wow, congrats.
That's a lot. Thank you. I appreciate it. I feel like some of it is some good team, good bad stat, good team, or nope, good stats, bad team stuff, because I was doing a daily podcast and we're getting back into that. So a lot of it just generated from that. But yeah, over 2.5 years, I do feel really good about 300. And so I was looking at some of the other ones that I've done, and one of them was the off-season superlatives with yourself. And that was a fun one. But what I want to do now, before we get to the topic of today, is really just kind of go back a little bit and circle back to your basketball journey up to this point. I've been trying to do that for guests in general, trying to understand what got them into this content space, why they love basketball, what their specific focus is. And I think the history of that is always so interesting. And with you, I mean, you have a Substack, Basketball Poetry. Your work, obviously, with Basketball Intelligence, which is basically like the encapsulation of like consuming basketball content and producing it. This is perfect crossroads there. That's not the word I'm looking for. Either way, the point being, you are around the game on a regular basis, in addition to everything else you do outside of that. So I wanted to get your story and just how you got into that, what sparked the love, and what has you on the path you are on right now.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks again for having me. Essentially, I was working in finance for like a decade, do not recommend. At the end of that, I was like, time to go to business school and figure out what I want to do going forward, because it's not the finance stuff. So went to business school right as the pandemic hit. When we were all locked in and with nothing to do, I started blogging about the NBA, which had been my passion for pretty much my entire life. And I was lucky because I got some I got a little bit of notice from some of the big names in the industry. Got shouts out from Nikias Duncan and Dan Devine, and that kind of put me on the map a little bit. Then Ray LeBove, who our mutual friend, runs Basketball Intelligence. He reached out to me about potentially helping him run Basketball Intelligence. And so I jumped on board that. So now, I have Basketball Poetry, basketballpoetry.com. Everyone should check that out. Basketball Intelligence, we send out a daily, 7 days a week email with links and stories from all around the web, along with some of the juiciest quotes and most fun stats that other people are pulling up. So check that out. We're currently running a big holiday special. But what's most exciting about Basketball Intelligence is we get to work with some of the most talented people in the industry. And we just launched our partnership campaign, which includes massive savings for Basketball Intelligence subscribers to some of the biggest independent NBA websites out there. So things like True Hoop has a 30% off for Basketball Intelligence subscribers. Last Night in Basketball with Jared Dubin, Statitudes with Justin Kubatko, Fieldhouse Files, if you're a Pacers fan, Howls and Growls, Knicks Film School, Rose Garden Report, Corporate Knowledge, Raptors Republic, and of course for NBA draft coverage, No Ceilings. All those guys have partnered with Basketball Intelligence, so make sure you check us out.
Yeah, that is wild. As someone who is honored to work with both you and Mike, it's really cool to kind of see, or I've seen this coming together, but just as a basketball fan, it doesn't get much better than this, right? And with the work that Basketball Intelligence does, the work that we do putting all this together, and the amazing publications that we partner with, if you love basketball, it's kind of a no-brainer in my mind, to get the best everyday access to, special, just the straight experts at their field, their specific team, their specific, roster construction specialist. It's really cool. So definitely make sure to check that out. And thank you,
getting the sales pitch out of the way right off the bat. That's the best.
There we go. Hit him hard, hit him early. It's not football, but might as well take that philosophy in there. But no, I love that. So definitely make sure to check that out. I will have the link for all of this later on in the show. When we're done recording, the link for this will be in the podcast. So you can definitely take advantage of that. But it's worthwhile. It's not even just your normal sales pitch. You like basketball, you listen to this podcast, do your due diligence. Check it out. With that being said, thank you for sharing not only your story, Mike, but also a really good discount for fans of the show and others to really take advantage of. And, I think that speaking of taking advantage of things, there's certain teams that take advantage of,
the trade deadline.
In a few days where certain contracts that were signed, can be traded. I think it was December 15th and I think on January 15th. So we're recording this is going to drop on the 12th of December, so 3 days ahead. I think teams take advantage of that. Our topic today is teams in need of a shakeup, which y'all knew because y'all read the title of the pod. But we kind of want to go into, teams that we nominate that we think for whatever reason should shake it up, whether it's a seismic change, whether it's a little change around the margins, whatever the case may be, what move seems to be needed and how we would address said need. That's basically how we're going to kind of format this show. And we're going to just kind of bounce it back and forth for a few teams here. Going to start with Mike. He is the guest, and then we'll go back to myself and just kind of share some notes and thoughts on different squads. So, Mike, you had some interesting teams. I know, a little peek behind the hood here. Let's get your first team nominated.
Yeah, I think the first team that I want to talk about, and hopefully this one can be brief because it's not so much about the on-court product, unlike all the other teams on our list, is going to be the New York Knicks. And this may come to a surprise to people because they're playing pretty well after, a bit of a slow start from some of their players, particularly Julius Randle, but they've perked up a little bit. However, there's been some really interesting comments coming out of Knicks world recently, particularly from Josh Hart and Quentin Grimes, where they're expressing their frustration with their role on the team, whether it be playing time or touches or a quick hook. Like, I think it was Grimes who mentioned, like, if he misses his first shot, he feels like he just gets pulled from the roster or pulled from the lineup. And to me, that speaks of like the team just having too many NBA quality bodies. And it feels like there might be some sort of consolidation trade the Knicks might want to do. All the reporting has indicated the Knicks want to stay pat and just like hold on to their ammo for a future superstar. Who may not be available this season. It might be more of an off-season thing, but you also don't want to let like this internal dissent fester, right? And start to drag down the attitude of a team that's frankly playing pretty well. And you couple that with the recent Mitchell Robinson news, where he's going to be out somewhere between 8 and 10 weeks, I think, before he's even reevaluated. So he could very well not return until the end of the regular season. And it feels like there might just be a medium-ish, small to medium move made where they trade some of their guards for somebody else, whether it's a Bojan Bogdanovic to try to juice up the shooting. I don't know how that fit would necessarily work with Julius Randle, but I think he's probably the best like movement shooter that you could get. I wonder if Gary Trent would move the needle for them a little bit as a more typical 3-and-D guy. He's having a little bit of a down year shooting-wise, but I think that he has a pretty long track record of being good from back there. So yeah, what do you think about that?
No, I kind of agree. I think that something needs to be done. I was looking at one avenue. Well, first off, I mean, the Mitchell Robinson news is seismic. Not only for him, you definitely hope he recovers and quickly or as soon as possible because 8-12 weeks is a chunk of time, but also just the Knicks big man rotation without him, right? It's a lot of Isaiah Hartenstein, like you said, Jericho Sims. And because Coach Tibbs is big about keeping, the quality of his bench, as he says, he's starting Jericho Sims, who is not Mitchell Robinson. With that being said, like you would think, okay, is there a move to address that need? Because Mitchell Robinson was a big part of what they did, particularly defensively. Also, like, what kind of contracts do you have to make a move? And I look at obviously Evan Fournier, who has been wanting to be traded for a few years now. Maybe Quentin Grimes is someone who is available as well. But also, and this might be like a dark horse because he's been so important to the Knicks. How do you feel about Emmanuel Quickly? He's going to be a future restricted free agent to be at the end of the season, and his value has been amazing. He's been a runner-up for the most recent Sixth Man of the Year award. He's averaging career best 15 points per game. He's often the first guy off the Knicks bench. And he's been equally capable of serving as a starter in place of either RJ Barrett or Jalen Brunson or coming off the bench. But I don't know if you want to, I would, but I also don't know where he's prioritized in terms of a contract coming up this next season. And if you were to trade him, the value that he brings to the Knicks, obviously that would reap something back in the trade market, you'd imagine.
Yeah, I would think so. I do think like his playoff struggles last year might have put a little bit of might have cooled off the trade market from a little bit. But it also depends on, I guess, who'd be looking at him. He is a young guy, so like he would make more sense on some teams that are still rebuilding if they want to see what he could do in a featured role. My instinct is that the Knicks love Quickly and are in no rush to move him. And I don't think I'm not 100% sure who they would move to try to get more big man depth or to get another guard, but it does feel like there's just too many guys there and they've got to get rid of a couple of them. My bet would be on it being either Hart or DiVincenzo potentially once he's eligible to be traded. But I mean, DiVincenzo's also been shooting the cover off the ball, right? Like I feel like he's actually become pretty important to that team. So we'll see.
Yeah, ultimately, I don't know. Obviously, the Knicks need to make moves. They can't. I don't think they can just keep sitting on their hands and hoping a top, 10 player just falls in their laps. And I doubt one becomes available during this current season the Knicks can get to. The summer probably is their best chance of doing so. But like right now, there's a clear ceiling on this team for me, and I think it's like a second round exit, right? Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle are both good players. Jalen Brunson a little bit more than Randle, in my opinion, but like they're not the level of talent that just raise up another level and fall too deep into postseason contention. That's just not what they do.
Yeah, you're never going to get commensurate value for Randle's highs. I think like he's just such a weird player. There's no way another team is going to value him at a level where it's going to bring you back anything resembling equivalent player value, right? At least that's my opinion. I don't know who would be excited to trade up like young players or even established veterans for Julius Randle.
I agree.
And he's playing well right now. So
he is. Like you said, the highs on their high are high, right? The lows are like 3 for 19 and a lot of
roller coaster.
Shot. Yep, exactly. So I'd like to get off the Julius Randle ride. I like him, just not as a featured player, and maybe a trade might help with that, but we won't know because I don't think the Knicks do anything here. But a team I really hope does something that I also am not optimistic on. Speaking of, is the Chicago Bulls. That's the team I want to talk about next. The Bulls. I mean, listen, they've actually, and I hate to say it, but like since losing Zach LaVine, have had a lot better fight. They lost their most recent game against the Bucks, but it went to overtime. That was good. DeMar DeRozan went up for 40. That was nice. People listening want to trade for a guy like that. Like here they are. As it stands, I mean, the Bulls' record isn't great. They currently sit 12th in the East at 9-15. Just in general, haven't been super great, and we saw a lot of dysfunction early. Like we talked about, on this show, and I think we talked about before as well. Like a players only meeting after game 1 of the season. Yikes! Not a whole lot going well there. But since then, I don't know. It's Zach LaVine gave the most innocuous trade request around. So that's been a thing. And the Bulls, then he got injured or was injured with some right foot soreness. And since then, the Bulls have kind of been a little bit better. Other guys have stepped up. Kobe White's been shooting the ball really well. Other young guys have been getting more of an opportunity. I think that you've been able to have DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic in roles that are maybe better suited for them. Like they could still raise their level up a little bit, but like they aren't the go-to guys because I don't think they ever really were. But yeah, it's just been a weird team and just honestly not a good team. Signs for, I don't know, improvement or signs for hope moving forward with some of the younger guys. But bottom line, you're a team that currently is, in the 20s in offensive, defensive, and net rating. 21st in offensive rating, 22nd in defensive rating, 23rd in net rating. Just one step lower each time. You got to love it. But yeah, Mike, what are your thoughts on the Bulls and like making a move, whatever?
Yeah, I think first off, I have a lot of notes about the Bulls, and they're mostly negative. But I feel like Bulls fans kind of get pooped on a little bit too much for their team. Like what they really need is a new front office and a new owner, right? Like this is a team that is designed to generate profit, not a team that is designed to compete in playoff games. And it's really hard to make major changes if you have an owner who's not willing to make competitive moves, and you have a front office that seems to be willfully blind to their own mistakes. I don't anticipate them tearing it down to the studs, even though they're finally talking about potentially moving on from Zach LaVine. I don't think LaVine's trade value is particularly high right now, and it might actually be better for the team to let him come back from this foot thing and like demonstrate that he can still be a valuable player, right? I don't know who'd be like, the reporting is that nobody's really that excited about pulling for LaVine. Alex Caruso, you might be able to get like a first rounder from a contender for, and that's worth exploring, of course. But I think like for Bulls fans, like there's still some things to look forward to. Kobe White, I had as a candidate for most improved player, and that was before his recent stretch where he had like 33, 24, 19, and 31 points in his last 4 games. I think it's pretty cool that at least there's like a guy that hopefully you'd be able to hold on to and build around a little bit going forward. Maybe not as a superstar, but as a potential high level contributor on future Bulls teams that are going to be good. His story has actually been really interesting, as like he's really evolved his game a lot in the last couple of years. Like he started off as like an all offense guy. Then he slowly transitioned into trying to be more of like a distributor and defender, which I thought was really cool, particularly the defensive side. And then he had some interesting quotes before the season about wanting to return to his scoring roots. And we're really seeing that, especially in LaVine's absence. So I've been really impressed with Kobe White's journey over his whole career, not just this season, but we're finally seeing it culminate in something awesome. And as you mentioned, like DeRozan's passing's been really superb as he's picked up a lot of the playmaking duties without Levine in there. But yeah, I mean, I'd love for them to tear it down. I just don't think they're going to do that. I'm not even sure doing it right now would be the best value return for them. But at the same time, it'd be nice just to get it over with, right? Like rip off the Band-Aid. I just don't think they will.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be something, I don't know. It's something we haven't seen from these Bulls in years, which is just like a full culture reset, just moving on, like making it a thing. I don't know if they will either. I think, like you said, the Levine market has been tepid at best. He's not really he's a good player, not a great player who's not really, he's a good fit, but not a great fit for teams, especially teams that would like his services that would have to give up something of their own to make that happen. And the long-term contract he's on is difficult to gauge, especially the injury history, right? DeMar DeRozan, better because he is on a 1-year expiring deal, but as a player, he's a little more of a divisive fit. Just because of his established way of playing, not really spacing the floor, kind of needing the ball in his hand to be effective, not really being a great defender, not a Levine level bad defender, but not a great one. So that's something to consideration as well. Nikola Vucevic, he's staying in Chicago. Like I get it. I would hope that there would be a move. At least maybe you tell the vets, hey, we're going to play the younger guys more, and you could be more of an ancillary role, or we could work on buyouts with y'all, or we could figure out something. But like, we're just going to embrace the tank. The problem is you should have done that the year before with a generational prospect in the draft, and now you're doing an arguably one of the worst draft classes in recent memory, and not even in like a bad way. I've been looking at the draft class. I'm just saying you're not really. If you draft someone high in this draft class, they're probably going to join the ensemble of Bulls young players right now. Like good but not great, some promise, but who knows, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm with you. I just think that a move is like screaming out, just as season goes on, because you made this roster iteration 3 years ago, 2021 at this point, with the hopes of competing for, I don't know, second round exit, and you're not even reaching that ceiling. So I don't know. I hope something happens, but I'm right there with you in the thought that it probably won't. What's your next team that you like to talk about, Mike?
Let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks. So they are, to me, the like ultimate less than the sum of their parts team, where there's a lot of guys on that roster. You look like, yeah, I kind of like that guy. Like he's got some, real value he could bring to a team, but it just doesn't add up to much right now. I was not high on the DeJounte Murray trade when it happened. I don't like the fit of Murray next to Trae Young at all. I think that they miscalculated a lot of the value that DeJounte Murray would bring. And in some ways, like Murray's actually been better than I expected on offense. Like he's turned, especially this year, he's turned himself into like a reasonable catch and shoot shooter from deep. He's hitting off the dribble. He was driving a little bit more. That's kind of tailed off recently. But like Murray is allergic to contact on both ends. Like he's not a physical guy. He's scared to shoot free throws. I don't know why. And like he's a very good point of attack. I shouldn't even say that. He's a very good defensive playmaker who's a pretty good point of attack defender if he's guarding a small guy. He has no flexibility. He can't switch onto bigger players very successfully. And so like, yeah, he can guard the best point guard, but he can't really do much more than that. And I think, especially if you are trying to design a team with playoff hopes, versatility across positions becomes more important than excellence at one or two positions. I just don't like the theory of the roster construction there. There's still two guys who are better with the ball in their hand. And the defense has been perplexing to me because Quinn Snyder is a very good basketball mind, but the Hawks are allowing the second most shots at the rim and the fourth most corner threes, which are the two most valuable, geometric areas on the court. And I don't know what kind of defense is designed to allow both of those things. And they don't have like amazing defensive personnel, obviously, but like that to me speaks of schematic issues. Losing Jalen Johnson hurt. Like he was playing awesome. He was like a most improved candidate early on. But I don't understand why AJ Griffin, their rookie from last season, is not playing. He seems like the kind of potential 3-and-D player down the road that you'd be wanting to develop in at least some minutes, but he's essentially out of the rotation. Bogdan Bogdanovic has been playing very well. He had a crazy night last night. He's been shooting super well.
Yes, he did.
But they still need like a defensive-minded wing who's better than DeAndre Hunter, or a bigger guard that they can sub in, almost like a Caruso type that they can sub in to be a little bit more versatile defensively at the point of attack. I'll pause there and let you riff off that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I agree. I think cutting through, like you said, you've identified the need. I totally agree with that need. They need to get a better wing. They can upgrade that position. The question is who, right? And do they have the piece to make that move happen? Because if you consider DeJounte Murray and Trae Young untouchable, obviously, I said that in the opposite order. I meant Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. But the bottom line, you consider those guys not touchable, then you're looking at what, a Clint Capella, Jalen Johnson, perhaps, even though that'd be kind of counterproductive, being that you need more wings, and he's been like one of your good ones. DeAndre Hunter has been maddeningly inconsistent, but like with Johnson out, he's been your best wing on the floor. AJ Griffin is there somewhere, Will we find him? Who knows? But he's there. And so like you wonder, okay, what do you have to trade that will get a player, like that will get an upgrade that you're looking for? I doubt teams are knocking down the door for Sadiq Bey, unfortunately. With that being said, like, what player would you be looking at? Like, Zach LaVine's been the center of trade rumors this season. I don't think Zach LaVine helps them at all with what they really need. Bogdanovich, I wouldn't move. He's been, like you said, solid. Literally was on a heater in their most recent game last night. I just don't know. Pascal Siakam possibly, OG Anunoby possibly, but Pascal Siakam I think is more of a 4 than a 3. And OG Anunoby, I just don't know if the Hawks have the assets to get him.
Right, that's the bummer, because I think Siakam would be an interesting fit, because at least he'd bring a little bit of what like Jalen Johnson had, which is that like playmaking from the 4 spot, some rebounding, just like some more feel for the game even. But he also isn't much of a shooter. Neither was Jalen Johnson, but you'd like to see more shooting around Trae Young at all times, right? But I also think that like Alec Burks was a smaller name I had on my list as like sort of a 6'6", just like big guard / medium-sized wing that can do a little bit on both ends. But yeah, the name, because the Hawks, like, I do think they have the contracts to make it work, but I don't know if they have like you said, like players that are appealing to other teams. So I don't know that they could go get OG Anunoby. I'm not even sure they could get Siakam. I'm like dying to know what Siakam's price ends up being. I can't wait for that, because I could see it going any number of different ways. But yeah, the Hawks have just been designed like very purposefully, and I just wasn't. I don't really love the vision for it. The one thing I should say is like, hey, they have a positive point differential, 5th best offense, 5th worst defense, 9-13. Like they're playing, the results are worse than they should be, but it's still a team that projects to be a 500-ish team, just like they are every year, it feels like. So, yeah,
you said it. I wonder how that works itself out. Again, I feel like all these teams you brought up so far, you hope something happens. I think the Hawks are just, their philosophy may be to make something happen. I know there was a rumored trade. Apparently, Sports Illustrated said there was a rumored deal for DeAndre Hunter, AJ Griffin, and some draft compensation for Siakam over the summer, which obviously didn't happen because here we are talking about them. But like,
was that one of the AI writers for Sports Illustrated, or
funny? No, you're right. Listen, that whole thing was a mess. I didn't really get to comment on that. Maybe it was, and that would explain why such a god awful deal was offered. But no, I'm playing. But with that being said, I don't know if the Hawks will make a deal, not because they don't want to, just because they really don't have the means to do so. Another team to be monitoring. All right, here's another quick hitter for me. I just want to get your thoughts on it. I'll kind of set it up. The Clippers. They actually are doing decent, I guess. Like they seem to be so good here for a minute, bad here for a minute. Like they'll come and have a great win over a tough team, and then to give a disappointing loss to a very shorthanded roster, and you're like, what is going on? Yesterday, I mean, it took heavy minutes from Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, but they were able to beat the Portland Trailblazers, a tough Trailblazers team. They are better now. Anthony Simons has been better. Shaedon Sharp's been good. Like, even with DeAndre Ayton out, they've been better. But with that, the Clippers are currently 8th. They're 12-10. They've just been maddeningly inconsistent. The James Harden trade has definitely brought mixed results. You have PJ Tucker, who was brought in with James Harden, and he not only there was like talk that he was frustrated with his role, and then that was confirmed last night, where he said, quote, I feel like I still have a lot to contribute to a team to be able to win, whether that's here or somewhere else. I know myself, my worth. I know what I bring. I know what I brought. I know what I continue to bring. And with that, I want to be able to go to a good team that I can be able to help that. And then he elaborated even more, saying, when asked if he sees himself having a role down the line, I mean, yeah, obviously coming here, you try to figure out the best way to be possible to be able to do what you do. But, like I said, sometimes you see it and it ain't there. Sometimes you see it, but the team doesn't see it the way you see it. So, like, there's definitely something there. Like, where there's smoke, there's fire, for sure. And, like, he all but, like, lit the match himself out there last night, which isn't crazy because PJ Tucker at this point is not, like, at all a huge name like a Hard or anything like that. But he is, like, a player that can make an impact, right? But it's not even about PJ Tucker. That's, like, the biggest, like, nugget of news here. It's also, like, the fit between James Harden and what that's done Russell Westbrook, who has given great performance off the bench, but Russell Westbrook in the bench is kind of weird, right? It's what's happening with the wing players that are not PG or Kawhi, right? How does Harden fit in as a point guard who needs, like, there's a lot going on there, but the biggest elephant in the room is this. At the end of the season, Kawhi, PG, Harden, and Westbrook could all be gone. They could all move on to different teams. And the biggest ones, of course, are PG and Kawhi. And this is the healthiest they've been as Clippers together in their tenure in Los Angeles. But like, we haven't heard any extension talks. Are the Clippers willing to ride this one out and just see what happens at the end of the playoffs and say, okay, we'll bring you back or not before they go into their new arena? Like, what is the conversation there? They've been injured more in their early 30s. Now you're paying a contract going to take them through their mid 30s into the late 30s potentially. Like, is that something the Clippers should do? Should they shake up? Should there be a trade for either of them while there's still some value to be reaped back? Like, that is the questions I have, or those are the questions I have.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised you put them on the list, to be honest, just because I feel like, their shakeup was adding James Harden, right? Like, this is clearly their last go at it. And I think if this goes badly, you have the competing pressure of, like, they have that new stadium opening up, and obviously they want to have a compelling product on the court. But, like, I don't know that, like, the PG Kawhi experience has been all that thrilling for Clippers fans to begin with. Like, they haven't had the success they hoped for, obviously. They're always hurt. I don't think that Kawhi especially has really endeared himself to the fans. I had an article a couple weeks ago titled, Paul George is the Clippers' best player. And the point was like, hey, Paul George has been playing great this year, but if he's your best player, then your ceiling is only so high. And Kawhi's looked a little bit better of late, but to me, it just seems like a labor for him to get to his spots. It seems, the shot, it looks flatter than ever. Some nights he comes out and he looks very springy, and then he comes out the next night and he looks like he's just creaking out there. And I worry that, worry is not quite the right word, but like, they're not a top tier team in the West. I think James Harden substantially raises their ceiling, which, I mean, that's not like an uncommon opinion, but I don't think they have too many moves left to make. And I think that the Harden stuff has started to stabilize. Like, the starting lineup for the Clippers has been very good overall. And I think they're just going to go in there, hope everybody's healthy, and see what they can do in the playoffs. I still don't think that anybody's going to want to play them in the playoffs if everybody's still healthy, even if you think they don't quite have the firepower that, like, the Nuggets or maybe the Suns have. But no one's going to be excited about playing playoff Kawhi Leonard, right? Like, if he's healthy, no matter if he's a little creaky or not. So we'll see. I can't see them making too many. Maybe they'll add like a 7th man type or 8th man type to the roster, especially if PJ Tucker wants out. But I don't know. I think the shakeups happened, and I think they're just going to ride it out, see how the season goes, and then decide what to do with some of these players. Don't forget, Paul George and Kawhi love living in Los Angeles. So I don't think they're going to be eager to leave, even if they're not signed to extensions. I think they're going to want to stay in LA no matter how the season plays out. And then Clippers are going to look at it and be like, just judge based off how the playoffs and the rest of the season goes.
Yeah, no, and mind you, that makes sense. I put them really, it was like, should they make a shakeup? Question mark in that category because of their kind of tenuous position going to off season. It would definitely be wild. I wouldn't say it's completely unsurprising if there was something to happen, but like it would definitely be an outlier for sure. So this was a quick hitter, more of a question than anything. But yeah, I agree. I think more than likely they kind of ride out the line because they do have the talent on the team necessary to make a championship run. I just don't know if these players are. I don't know. I don't think they have the potential to do it. I just don't think that they will. There you go. These players at their current stage of their career, whether it's fatigue, age, a combination of both, past injuries, like I just don't see it. But it's possible. So yeah, it was more of a question for me.
The Clippers have to believe it's possible because they don't really have any other options. Like I don't think you'd get that much back for Kawhi for 1 year rental. Maybe you would get something for sure, but like that he has proven already that he will stay for 1 year and he will leave no matter what if it's not a place he wants to be, right? Just ask Toronto about that. Season could not have gone better and he was still out there for LA the second he could. So yeah, I don't think they're going to shake it up. I think they're just going to give it one go and see how things go and reevaluate.
That's fair. That's fair. I definitely like that for sure. You're calling another team, friend?
I think one of the other teams that you had on the list that we could talk about is probably the Raptors. So, Raptors are obviously like the number one team on everybody's list of teams that need a shakeup, but there's a good reason for that. And there's a lot of different ways they could go. Last year, I think everybody expected them to be sellers with Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam. And instead, they bought and brought back Jakob Poeltl in a trade that has looked, I don't know if you want to say disastrous, but it hasn't looked good because Poeltl's played fine, but the team results haven't been there. So it's almost like, what's the point if you were the exact same team as you were before, even if it looks a little bit better? I didn't understand their offseason at all. I didn't understand the signing of Schroeder, who it is funny because the Schroeder experience is the same everywhere he goes. First 10 games, people love him. He's like, oh my gosh, he's so fast. Look at his defense. Like he gets to the hoop whenever he wants.
His three ball goes down.
Yeah. And then games, 11 through 20, people are like, it feels like he probably should be passing a little bit more. Feels like he probably should stop shooting pull up 3-pointers with 21 seconds left on the shot clock. And then games 21 onwards, people generally fall out of love. And then the playoffs, it's been a mixed bag. But
you gave the perfect Dennis Schroeder experience. I'm sorry.
Great. It's almost like the opposite of that meme that always goes around about Jimmy Butler, right? Where it's like the first month of the season, it's like, what's basketball? The second month of the season, it's like MVP caliber. And then in the playoffs, it's like, this man is Michael Jordan. I think that is the opposite of the Dennis Schroeder experience.
I love that. Exactly.
Yeah, they just have a lot of redundant parts. And I think the Raptors have been so interesting to me as a learning experience around roster construction, where like the theory did make sense when they started this project of like, let's get a bunch of length and a bunch of guys who are pretty good at everything and try, or at least like are capable of doing a lot of different things, maybe is a better way of putting it. And let's see what happens. And I think that the league was watching that very closely. And it turns out that you still need guys with specialized skill sets. Like, of course, it's better if every player can do everything, but you still need a guy who is able to set up the offense. You still need a guy whose role is off-ball shooter. Like, you just need certain skill sets that players are designed for. Even if everyone can do the same thing, you have to play different roles. And I think that has been a learning experience for a lot of people, including me. It's been fun to see and recognize the value of like guys who have specific roles and are able to fill them. Whereas the Raptors have a bunch of guys who are like decent at filling a bunch of different roles, and hasn't added up to team success.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely been interesting. I don't know what Toronto does. I mean, are they going to go into the trade deadline with the same situation that they've had with Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry before him, where a guy who could potentially not return for nothing?
They can't, right? I say that. They probably will.
That. I was about to say, I thought they wouldn't with Fred VanVleet. Like, that was the steam was there, and yet here we are. Like, I hope that wouldn't be the case, but I have no faith in their front office to do differently. And I hate to say that, but we just haven't seen reason to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
sorry.
Oh, no, please say. I'm sorry.
I was just say the one thing that isn't peculiar, I think, is like how everyone is so excited to trade OG Anunoby, who to me is like a guy that does fit pretty. Like Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam overlap way more than OG Anunoby does with the other two, because OG Anunoby is such a good like stationary shooter and obviously can be defensively more versatile than either of them. I think Scotty Barnes' defensive versatility has become a little overrated, even though he's become an excellent defender overall. But he's not really quick enough, and he doesn't stay low enough on the perimeter the way that Anunoby and Siakam do. And I think that like there is a world where if they're able to get something interesting back for Siakam, you get back something, you keep Anunoby, and you hope you can re-sign him. If you hope that Siakam's absence opens up more offensive role for Anunoby and he's happy to stay there, right? Like if you think that's a viable path, Anunoby is the type of player that every good team wants to have, and I wouldn't be in a rush to get rid of him, but it just comes down to whether you think he'd stay in Toronto this year or not. You can't let him leave for nothing in free agency when his price tag, you would imagine, will be much higher than even Fred VanVleet's would have been last year. So
yeah, no, you're right. You wonder how that looks, but I totally agree with you on that. Like potentially you could give more, reset your franchise. Not that OG's old by any chance, but like 26, like he's in his prime. I'm not really sure what players you're specifically looking for, but more an archetype player that you are looking for, right? To build around Scotty Barnes and make this the next Raptors team of the future. Because this current iteration, you could say from 2020 to now, I think Kawhi, like I would call the Kawhi era like the completion of the DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry era, if I had to. And then I'd say from 2020 to now would be like, the rest, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. And now this would be a natural evolution to like change into whatever the future Raptors would be. So I agree with you completely. I just don't know if Toronto will do that. I guess it depends on your faith in Masai Ujiri and what we'll hear after the fact from Shams Charania and all the other sources of what the Raptors could have done and what was offered and what they didn't take. And that's why Siakam will go to another team randomly, in free agency.
Man, I wish there was a Mike Conley clone that could just come onto this team, like be like a secondary, like be an awesome guy to get them into their sets, hit off ball threes, like just kind of orchestrate everything and keep them chill, because like I'm just so tired of watching the Raptors half court offense be so terrible. And I love Scotty Barnes. Like he's been so good this year, but he's still not he's not quite as good as people think he's going to be yet, right? Like he's still growing into his role a little bit. He's a little bit limited offensively if he can't like draw the fouls or finish at the rim. Although the 3-point shot has been very legitimate. I've been very impressed with that. Like I get nervous when he is sort of getting the ball with the back to the basket and then trying to make a post move or like a quick move to get going, do hooks and stuff like that. Like that hasn't actually worked out as well for him. I feel like he's best offensively when he kind of gets the ball on the move and is able to kind of like use his dynamic ball handling and his like ability to map the court to make plays for others or make plays for himself. But they run so much through him through like the mid post with his back to the basket. And that's been good for passing, but it hasn't been good for Barnes's individual like ability to score. And you look at the numbers and it's pretty clear Siakam is still the best player on this team in terms of driving winning. Again, he's older. He's not going to be the best player for forever. And it'd be nice if he could hit a 3-pointer at all.
It's been rough.
Yeah, so like it's just I don't know. The Raptors are a mess, man. But I because there are so many ways to make this team look better in the future. I do think it's going to be really interesting to see what they end up doing. Because there are a lot of avenues that I think are plausible, and I think, like I said, Scotty Barnes' leap overall, like he's become a freaky good defender, like guarding like 4s and 5s, particularly I think, and is a help guy. But if the 3-point shot is real, like that changes everything for Scotty Barnes going forward. So like I have been low on Scotty Barnes in the past, I think, but this year has really changed my mind. Like I do think he's on a like insane trajectory now in a way that I didn't last year. And the nice thing is like the areas that he can improve upon are areas that players can improve. And what I mean by that is it's like you get some of these guys who like don't have feel for the game. It's like you don't become much better at mapping the court as you get older. You don't become much better at like just making quick decisions as you get older, right? Like there are skills that you can build upon that you can get better at though. And I think those are the ones that Scotty needs to keep working on. So I'm really excited about Scotty Barnes. And I think if you have that, the Raptors can't be too bleak of a situation. This isn't necessarily like Chicago, right? Like there's still hope for the future. You just have to figure out the best way to chart your path forward.
Yeah. The Toronto Raptors slogan should now be "We ain't Chicago," but like, I agree. It's true. Another quick hitting team I want to bring, really more of a question mark in that Clippers category, would be the Golden State Warriors. They just been down. I think a lot of it has been some regression, whether it's permanent or otherwise, from both Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins. Steph Curry's been balling out, but like only so much he can do. I like Chris Paul. I thought that Chris Paul has been great helping to stabilize that Warriors bench, but they've been called into action more in the starting lineup because of injuries. And you've also had Draymond Green, who's been all over the place, been playing decently well, when he's not being ejected or suspended or whatever the case may be. Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody have had minutes, and I think they've been actually pretty decent in those minutes, but consistently moving forward hasn't been a thing, but neither has their role, right? So, like, that's been a thing. Brandon Podziemski is in there and hasn't been super bad either. Like, they just feel like a mess, a little discombobulated mess, a talented discombobulated mess, but a mess just the same. And you wonder, Klay Thompson, a free agent end of the year, was playing pretty abysmal the first month of the season. It's kind of getting a little bit better now, but defensively, you definitely see slipped. Offensively, he's not making threes. It's not super great. And he's had some rough performances, and he wants an extension. And I think, given the way he's performed for the Warriors over the last 12 years, one is probably due. But if you're also looking at like how much he will probably want, and like what's it going to take from the team that's already pretty expensive, in addition to Draymond Green, who's already pretty expensive and has also regressed slightly, like that's kind of an albatross potentially. So I just don't know if the Warriors if you're saying, hey, are they a championship team right now? No, they're not. Right?
No.
If you're saying like a deep playoff team, what is that, second round, like last year? I don't even know if they reached those levels. Like their ceiling is not great. Steph Curry is playing amazing well and be 36 like later on this year.
Yeah.
So like I feel something has to be done. I'm stricken by indecision as to what that would be. Yeah,
and it's weird because like their ancillary pieces are actually playing better than I expected in some ways. Like Chris Paul's been better than I think a lot of people expected. I was like lukewarm, slightly positive on Chris Paul, and I think he's been about that, like slightly positive. One thing that's fun I do want to call out is I think Steve Kerr has used Chris Paul in a lot of the same places where he uses Draymond. So Chris Paul's in charge of like catching the ball on the wing while they're doing all their split cuts and stuff like that, right? And I actually think that's helped his integration, where they're putting him in positions to be less of a, like an on-ball playmaker and more of like a catch the ball and make a quick decision playmaker, which has been fun to watch. But he's hurt. He'll probably be hurt in the playoffs like he is literally every year. So you can't really count on that. Way too much of this team is dependent on like Dario Saric, which makes me like, he's playing great, but makes me real nervous. Like what do you do with Klay and Draymond? Like Draymond slipped on defense like pretty substantially, which I mean, he was coming from a very high point, so he's still a good defender overall. But like he's not going to be in any defensive player of the year conversations, I don't think.
No.
You know, he is making threes this year, but he's also like, no one cares. You know, he doesn't, even if he's shooting like 45% or something, I think, from three,
something
on like
wild,
3 attempts per game. Like he's actually hitting them on low volume, but not zero volume. And defenses do not care at all. They will live with Draymond with, you know, 1.5 Draymond threes per game. Clay's shooting, I feel like he's kind of a slow starter every year, but this does feel different. But the real problem to me has been Wiggins. He not only has Wiggins not been able to shoot, he looks kind of scared to shoot. The turnovers are way up, even though he's like playing less and has a reduced role in general. I think that's an interesting thing to monitor. Like this team went, especially when Chris Paul was on and they started off really well. Like they had that great start to begin the season. Their turnovers as a team were way down. And then I haven't looked at the exact timing, but it definitely correlates a little bit with Chris Paul's absence. Is like their turnovers are back up again, except they're not hitting the shots like they used to. So like the offense overall is just kind of ground to a halt a little bit. So yeah, if they can find a way to get, like, at this point, I don't even think they need to get the value back so much as they just need way more from the Wiggins minutes. And that might just be simply shifting those minutes to some of their younger players that have been playing better, like Moses Moody. So to me, the Warriors, I just can't see them trading Clay or Draymond. And if that's the case, the solution is going to have to be an internal trade where it's just trading minutes between players, right? And seeing what some of their younger guys can do in bigger roles. And like, for as much as we want to talk about Kuminga, like he's actually playing like the exact same minutes total this year he was last year, you know, like a flat 20 minutes per game. Moody's obviously playing more, which is good to see, but these guys need to get the regular season reps to get more comfortable, because I am not convinced that Wiggins is going to be able to be on the court with them at the end of the year. Clay just has too much, you know, history. Draymond's got too much history. They'll be out there one way or the other, I think. Although I say that Draymond did get benched in the playoffs last year, I think, for a little while down the stretch, right? And so like, maybe Kerr is going to be brave enough to do that to the guys who aren't playing well this year too. So maybe I shouldn't assume that.
I would hope so. I don't know if I feel like there's a sense of loyalty almost misguided to a certain extent.
You kind of have to, right? Like they've had so much success, and there has to be a hangover eventually, and this is it. And this is just what the championship hangover looks like, unfortunately. This is the price of being so dominant for so long.
Oh yeah, as somebody who rooted for the Thunder, you know, middle of the 2010s, I shed no tears. But you know, but no, I get you, and it's a reality of the situation. I just don't know what that looks like, and we'll see. I mean, they have a long stretch at home by the midway point of this month, so maybe, you know, friendly confines at home, building some continuity, they'll get a little bit better. That'll at least be good to see. But again, we will see. I just feel like something should happen. But any other team? Last kind of few quick hitters, anything, Mike, you kind of want to touch on before we kind of transition out of here?
I think those were all the teams on my list. So unless you had one more that you wanted to talk about, then I think that's it for me.
I did not. I guess I will say this. Was there a team that you're looking? Okay, let me throw out a nominee. The Wizards.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you bring up
the Wizards. Yeah.
I do. You know, it's funny. I love to think about the Wizards and their coaching situation, especially with Wes Unseld, because there's so many things that they do on the court that look smart and that, like, I'm very impressed by, and then it just adds up to a terrible team always. Yeah, and I'm like, always. Is this the coach's fault? Is it the talent's fault? Like Wes Unseld gets a really bad rap, and I feel like he's actually a very creative coach in some ways. And like, okay, so here's a fun thing. The Wizards are second best team in the league at finishing at the rim, and second best team in the league at nailing corner threes. They don't shoot a ton of corner threes, but they're like slightly above average at attempts at the rim. And they also like don't really turn the ball over, and yet they have like a way below average offense. And like the crazy thing here is like they're just one of the worst offensive rebounding teams in recent history. Like I think the number went slightly up after last night's game, but when I did this research yesterday morning, they were the lowest offensive rebounding team since the 2016-2017 Mavericks. And they were like 4 percentage points below Oklahoma City for the second worst offensive rebounding team.
Wow.
But then like the defense is like can't protect the rim at all. Like when Gafford's in, they're actually fairly respectable. Respectable is a strong word, but they're not horrendous when Gafford's in, right? Like at least
they're just a regular bad team.
They're just a regular bad team. But like he really should be a high-end backup, right? And so I would love to see them get a center with a little bit more potential. I mean, Koulibaly's been cool. Like, I think that's the thing that Wizards fans can take solace in is that Koulibaly's shown enough flashes that you can be pretty excited about him as the future. The less said about the Jordan Poole experience, probably the better. But it was a reasonable swing. Like I've never been super high on Poole, but at the same time, like you can't deny that he has had a lot of very high value moments in his career. They've come and gone, and they were in a unique Golden State ecosystem that success in Golden State doesn't always translate to other places, just like success in other places doesn't always translate when players move to Golden State. They just are such a unique team. But Poole, I mean, I don't think Poole's going to be there. Kuzma will be interesting if you talk about shakeups, and Kuzma's the one everybody wants the Wizards to trade. I don't know how much people would really give to him. I mean, he played a real role on a championship team already with the Lakers, right? But he's changed and grown a lot since then. Like, I don't know how happy he'd be being like a 3-and-D, like fourth or fifth option on offense now. Like, I think this is a guy who enjoys going out and getting his, right. And the defense,
absolutely.
He has been a good defender at times in his career. He's not a good defender now. Is it possible to flip that switch? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. I look at for tanking teams, Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma are the Jordan and Pippen of our time. So definitely like what I see there. But you're right. Like, I mean, Coulibaly has been actually pleasantly surprising. I was not super high on him. I feel like I'm eating crow on a lot of rookies I wasn't super high on going into the season. But I did. Brandon Miller for the Hornets has been surprisingly solid. I really hoped that the Hornets would have grabbed Scoot Henderson, but like Miller's been solid, right?
Yeah,
Coulibaly,
cool to see.
It really has been. And Coulibaly was someone like I big question about his offensive game. Wasn't sure what I felt about that. But he's actually been really assertive on some self-creation. Defensively, he's brought in what we thought he would coming in, and it's been nice to see him get some decent minutes as well. And you're right. I don't think it's on Wes Unseld Jr. For why the team's playing so bad, but good God, they're playing bad. Like,
yeah.
I tried to watch it last night's game and I just couldn't do it. I could not do it. It's just ugly. And you could see, whether it's the antics on the floor from Poole or stuff behind the scenes, you have some really solid players mixed in throughout. I thought, Denny Avdija has been playing pretty decently. I like Corey Kispert. I really think he'd be a really solid player on like a Brooklyn Nets or a contending team. Just the way he plays. I feel like it's kind of wasted in Washington. I hate to say it that way, but it is. But like, I feel like a shakeup could be good. Because even if you want to be a bad team, like, okay, a bad team with some of your younger players getting some more shine. Like,
right.
Kuzma's in his late 20s. Poole's young enough. He's just not very good. But maybe you say, okay, you know what? We'll make Poole a centerpiece. We'll trade Kuzma out there. Maybe I like Kuzma on the Kings. Or, I don't know, Kuzma on like another fun team where like it'd be cool to see his offensive game like show up. Maybe he can recommit the defensive side of the floor since he's playing on a team with actual expectations. And if you're watching, he gets some draft picks back or some younger prospects or something, and just fully commit to this like rebuild. Because right now you still have enough players between Kuzma, between Tyus Jones, who is always a solid guy, between DeLon Wright, haven't seen a lot of him, but like between those guys, exactly, like they can recoup some value and actually help contending teams. And so I don't know. I think that the Wizards should make a move to just further commit down the road they're already on. But if not, listen, they're doing great, kid. Like,
they're
doing great.
I can't be too upset about the Wizards' place because they were like Michael Winger was dealt a bad hand when he joined the team, and I think they did the best they could, or else they wouldn't have done it. Right? Does that make sense? I think that,
exactly.
Like, given the mistakes of the previous administration, like I think that this current group is doing the best they can. I think that Coulibaly was a great start. I was surprised by that pick. I don't follow anything but the NBA, so I don't know anything about these guys personally from like college or international or anything. But everybody said Coulibaly was going to be like this massive project, and who knew what he was going to look like? And project to me almost always ends in disappointment. And I mean, you obviously follow the Hornets closely, and you saw some of that with like the Kai stuff. Like projects just don't end particularly well. But I've been really pleased with Coulibaly, and like at least they have direction. The direction, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be it's going to be a arduous road before Washington is good again. But there is some solace in knowing that like at least you guys know what you're going to be for the next couple of years. Asset accumulation, young guys. Let's see what pops. So. It's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world. No, that's true. I like the fact that we kind of ended on a team with the Wizards who, they're on a path. Let's just say that. They're on a path. They could shake it up. They could not. It's fine. But definitely want to thank you, Mike, for hopping on and just talking about some of these teams with me. I definitely think it was interesting. Yeah. A lot of them, it's funny. I thought when I first came up with this topic, oh, yeah, we're going to have a few teams that we're just going to change up and this is how it's going to be. And it's like, a lot of it, we talked about it. And then it's like, well, hopefully do something. Maybe not. We don't know. We will see. But with the date, with the trade deadline, trade eligibility date kind of opening up, hopefully we do see some moves from some teams that actually need to, because we both follow the NBA, explicitly. Like we both really want to see, not transactions. I don't think either of us are in the transaction-focused game. If anything, I'm more into it than you are, just because I play a lot of general manager games. But like in terms of seeing teams having needs and addressing those needs to make more competitive basketball, that's what we want to see. So I think we're both on the same team when it comes to that. But lastly, I want to ask you. I asked this for all first-time guests, but then I said, let me just ask for all guests because I haven't really asked this for people. You watch basketball, you talk about it, you write about it, you probably play it. Actually, I know you play it. We talked about it. So I have to ask, what is your go-to move on the pickup court? And I put like an example, the fuck you three, which I love the name of that. Yeah. But like, what is your go-to move? Because I love hearing that. I know for me, I got like a Sean Marion type shot. I'm kind of related to him, so I think that works for me. Well, not kind of related to him. I am related to him. But also, I have a really good spin move going back to my right when I go to my left, and it works really well. And that's like my go-to: a step back on the left side and a spin move on my right. If I need a bucket and I feel like I can get one on you, I'm probably doing one of those two things.
Yeah, and it's funny because in my youth, and I'm in my mid-30s now, but in my youth, I was sort of a like pass and defense first point guard. And okay. I could get to the lane, but I didn't have much of a shot. As I've gotten older, and I've started to slow down, and I got to let some of these young guys take on more of the ball handling duties. I've had to develop different skills, and my go-to move right now is my favorite thing is put me on the left block, and I get the ball in the post. And I like to do sort of, this is going to be hard to describe, but it's basically a righty finger roll over my right shoulder, right in front of a very surprised defender. I did that to somebody who one time he said, I'd never seen that move in a basketball game before. And I'm like, that's what happens when you have no formal basketball training. You got to get creative. And so it's, guys, like I put a left shoulder into the guy, knock him a little bit off balance, and just kind of finger roll it right over my own shoulder back to the basket. And that has definitely become my go-to move in the post when I need a counter to some of the other stuff.
I like that.
Oh, it's very ugly, but very effective.
That's like my jumper. There you go. Like, ugly but effective. Like it works. And also, like the way you described it, it sounds like a play right out like the 70s or 80s.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like a basketball move where they would do like the hook shots and the finger rolls from different angles. Be like, what? Like, I'm 20 feet away. I'm uncorking a hook shot, something like that. That is cool. So would you consider yourself more like an inside player? Like I need a scouting report on Mike.
I'm always a point guard. I'm definitely a little bit, I'm not quite as good at getting into the lane and kicking out, but I'm a better shooter than I used to be. So I've like, when you're a kid and you're comparing yourself to players, right? Like my guy that I always wanted to be was Jason Kidd, right? Like that was my guiding light growing up.
Yes.
Now I would say I'm much more of like a Mike Conley type, but I will play a little bully ball in the post if you give me a chance.
There you go. I like that. That's what I was gonna say. When you were describing yourself, I'm like, he's evolved to like a late career Jason Kidd. Like maybe someone who wasn't a really good outside shooter, but
really, that's what I was. I was a younger Jason Kidd. Now I'm a late career Jason Kidd. That's a great way to put it.
Exactly. Yeah, because Jason Kidd would still like post you up every once in a while.
For sure,
just be a standstill shoot. I love that. That's funny. Way to stay to your archetype all the way through.
I didn't even think about that, but you're definitely right. That's exactly what happens.
I love it, man. That's fun. Well, thank you for sharing that. Look forward to one day maybe seeing you on the court. That'll be fun. Yeah, that'd be fun. I'm hoping we're rooting for next season. I fell through this last year because Colorado, thank you. But, we'll see how next season works out. But I want to say I've also enjoyed this conversation. So thank you so much, Mike, again, for your time and your insight. This was fun. Can you please let the people know where they can find you one more time, plug in BI and Basketball Poetry. Please give that some love as well.
Yeah. So please check out basketballpoetry.com. This has been a great month of content, I think, for the site. It's done really well audience-wise, so definitely look at that. Make sure you go to Basketball Intelligence. So that's something that Corban and I collaborate on along with our partner, Ray LeBeau. And that is like a key resource for everybody in the media, right? Like our customers include huge media personalities that you've seen on TV. It includes at least one person in every NBA front office. So like Basketball Intelligence is something you have to check out. Find me on Twitter at @BBallIsPoetry or on Threads at @basketball_poetry. Apparently somebody has already claimed both basketball poetry and basketball_poetry. So Threads, basketball_poetry. And thanks for having me, Corban. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, of course, always, absolutely. And the person who has that handle should give it up because I haven't heard of them. So there we are. Exactly. But no, I appreciate you and your time, Mike, and thank you again. I'll have the link to everything he's sharing in the description of the podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Corban NBA, CORBAN NBA. We definitely appreciate that. Make sure to check out Sports Ethos on Twitter at Sports Ethos, online, sportsethos.com. Basketball Intelligence, Mike already said it, but I'll say it again. Like, make sure to check that as well. And then one more thing, I collaborate on a podcast on Switch Theory called Roster Reconstruction, and we've been doing a pretty good series on the different mechanisms of team building. We did about a 2-hour conversation on just the draft, and we just finished about a 2-hour conversation on free agency and the trades. And we talked about the good, the bad, and the 2023-2024 Chicago Bulls. So, everything was covered there. Definitely make sure to tune into that. But that'll do it here for another episode of Roundball Ramble. I want to thank y'all again for tuning in. For Mike, for myself, we are Frosty. Y'all stay frosty, and I will talk to y'all real soon. All right, y'all.